Welcome to today's Operational Services Committee meeting. It is January 23rd, 2024. I am the chair of this committee. Joining me on committee is Councillors Blackmore, Councillor Berg online, and Mayor Clayton also online. So we'll call this meeting to order, and I will start with the land acknowledgement. The city respectfully acknowledges the Beaver, Cree, Dene, and Métis people as the original caretakers of these lands and surrounding areas. We are grateful to live, work, and play and learn on Treaty 8 territory within Turtle Island and acknowledge these lands have been home to diverse and sovereign First Nations and Inuit peoples since time immemorial. Thank you very much. We're blessed to be here. Move right in. There are no delegations today. The first item on the agenda is an in-camera item, and I'll look to members of the committee to make a motion to go in camera.
I move we go in camera.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blackmore. That motion is in order. Call to question.
Mayor Clayton in favor.
That motion carries. We'll just take a minute to go into camera. and 1. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for your patience. If you've been watching online, it's just been a blue screen for most of you, but we are back to the action here. We'll move on to our next agenda item, item 5, reports, and we'll go to Chief Glavin for service area updates. Chief Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. We'll start Environment and Parks. So we continue to build and maintain our outdoor rinks, the MCC Oval and the Croquet Curl at Muskogee Park. As well, we're continuing trail clearing, bus stop, and snow and ice control and sanitation with the most recent snowfall. In transportation, we're back into dealing with the most recent snow event with residential service that started yesterday on January 22nd. We expect that to take the typical 2 weeks, so to run through the entire rotation. Priority 1s were completed yesterday, and we're working on our priority 2s again on the schedule the day before Garbage Day. And I'm happy to take any other questions.
Thank you very much for that update, Chief Glavin. Look to my committee members for questions or other members of council. I do have one. It did come up yesterday during our youth council meeting, in fact, around snow and ice control. One of the youth asked members of council and administration why we haven't been sanding or salting as much. That's the perception that they were hearing from their friends and family members, that we need to do more. My assurance to them was that we're doing it appropriately at the right times. Just in case anybody's watching who might be impacted, how is our snow and ice control been carried out so far this early season with the snowfall and cold?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Thiessen. So we do have crews that are constantly monitoring the roads. We do apply sand. One of the challenges to applying sand and salt, for that matter, is that at a certain point, salt is no longer effective. I'm struggling to remember the exact Celsius cutoff on that, but we were well below that for the last little while. So ice or salt becomes less effective or not effective at all. That leaves you with any of the additional ice control materials that we put on. And those are generally effective, but after a while in the wheel ruts, we do see that get pushed to the side where it has to be reapplied. But ultimately, we are out there with significant frequency monitoring the iciness of those roads and especially the intersections. But we always encourage everyone to drive the conditions in cold weather when we have ice on the roads and successive snowfalls. The snow and ice does stick to the road, and until it either wears through or we get a warm spell, you need to be very careful on the roads. Thank you for that answer.
So for confidence in council, that was pretty much the answer that Councillor O'Connor gave to the youth yesterday around placing the salt and stuff like that. Another question, it was supplemental, but just for information purposes, at what temperature do we not send our crews out to do snow removal?
Thanks, Chair Thiessen. So when it gets to be approximately minus 35, and it's not a perfect science, it's a little bit more of an art in some cases, where we start to have hydraulic issues with things like loaders or graders. So once it hits minus 30, we start monitoring that fairly closely. If we start seeing issues, we might pull them off before that, but generally speaking, minus 35. But we would continue to run our plow trucks and sanders below those temperatures to maintain road safety.
Awesome. Thank you for those answers. That's just for, I knew the answers to those questions. That's just for general consumption for anyone watching, maybe our youth council as well. Look to any other questions to Chief Glavin. Seeing none, we'll move right along to item 5.2, Stormwater Drainage Bylaw. And I'll look to Chief Glavin again to introduce this topic.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. So today, administration is recommending that the Operational Services Committee recommend Council have 3 readings of the Stormwater Drainage Bylaw implementing the Stormwater Utility Charge. This is the culmination of discussions dating back to 2019 when the concept was first brought forward by the previous Council. And I'm now going to turn it over to our Director of Engineering Services, Christine Donnelly.
Welcome, Ms. Donnelly.
Thank you. Good morning. So I do have a presentation. Great. And I'm here to talk about the stormwater drainage. So to do that, I do have a short presentation about the stormwater drainage system. Also, I'm going to talk briefly about the stormwater utility model and the resulting bylaw. So So the city has a stormwater system that handles runoff from rainfall events and snow melt. It's a series of structures and facilities that collect, transmit, store, treat, dispose of the stormwater. And this system is there in order to buffer or protect properties in the event, when there is an event. The system includes ditches, roads, catch basins, pipes, storm ponds, and a whole bunch more. Operational costs for the system are currently funded through municipal taxes. The bylaw brought forward today shifts funding from a taxation to a utility charge as of July 1st this year. Many cities fund their stormwater system through a utility charge, so this isn't new. A stormwater utility model was developed based on impervious area to determine how to distribute those costs across the different properties. Charges have been proposed based on principles of user pay while being fair, equitable, and efficient. So each property in the city has been categorized as residential, non-residential, or farmland. This was done using assessment taxation information. Residential properties were then further, broken down and categorized based on the number of dwelling units into either lower or higher density residential. So recognizing the narrow distribution of the lower density residential properties, a flat charge per dwelling unit is proposed of $9.28 per month, which is $111.35 per year. The flat charge is based on the median impervious area of 150 meters squared and has been equated to 1 billing unit. Billing units were then estimated using the impervious area data that we have for the higher density residential and non-residential properties. Using those billing units, those properties were then assigned to a tier. 6 tiers are proposed, with the range of billing units put into the tier as shown on the screen. The maximum monthly charge to a single property is proposed at $916.05 per month, or $10,992.60 per year. It is proposed that the stormwater utility charge be added to the Aquaterra monthly bill whenever possible. It's anticipated this will work for over 90% of the properties. A separate monthly stormwater utility bill will need to be sent to the remaining 10%. Adoption of the proposed bylaw allows for the next steps to implement a stormwater utility charge that will fund our stormwater system as of July 1st, 2024. Next steps include communications to inform ratepayers, launch of a website or including a map that provides information on impervious area and billing units for each property so that people know the impact, as well as setting out a process to request a review. Finalizing processes, procedures, and policies to support the bylaw will also occur. It is recommended that the Operations Services Committee recommend Council have 3 readings of Bylaw C-1443, Stormwater Drainage Bylaw implementing a stormwater utility charge.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Ms. Donnelly. I'll turn to committee and council for questions. I have Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. Council has given this issue a lot of thought, starting with the previous council. So it's been under discussion around this table for well over 2 years, 3 years. And it is not an easy process to really understand. So in order to make it in order to give more information to our residents and businesses in the city, can I ask what the overall communication plan will be as this moves forward?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Blackmore. We have Director Cooper here to answer that.
Right, so through the chair, I'd like to provide a quick summary of what's in stall for residents over the next several weeks regarding the decision that's taking place on the 12th. So starting this afternoon, there will be an announcement issued to alert the public of the decision coming forward to Council on February 12th. In conjunction with that, we will also be providing a comprehensive overview of the topic through Q&As on the city website. This period between today and February 12th is an opportunity for really the public to learn more about this particular topic, and the Q&As on the website are designed to do that. So I strongly encourage residents to go to those resources and learn about what's taking place. In addition to that, we will also be providing a very specific information piece on the 12th, a news release from the city capturing the exact decision that was made. And then following that, we move into really the go forward communications, and that would kick off as of post February 12th. It's a mix of direct outreach, so sending mail pieces to residents, hosting information sessions, additional announcements, advertising across social media, radio, etc., trying to keep the public advised of not only what the decision was, but also as we move through this process, the city staff and council itself will get feedback and will learn accordingly. We'll be exposed to different questions. Different ideas will come forward as people interpret and begin to understand what's taking place. So we will modify and add additional information to those resources. We don't have all the answers specifically today because people have yet to see how this will specifically impact them and their property. So as we start to get feedback, we'll modify and improve upon the information that's available. So it is an evolving process as we move forward. In addition to that, once the decision is made on the 12th, we will post key dates so people can follow along with what's taking place and when. There will be resources in terms of how can I learn more about my specific property through some of those calculators. They will be made available. And the information sessions that we'll be hosting will also be advertised, and we'll be encouraging people to attend those. I think given the complexity of this topic matter, our position is that once people have an understanding of what it is that has been decided upon, if they still have questions, they should move into specific conversations with the resources the city is making available. And specifically, I'm referring to Access GP. That will be the major tool going forward where the unique circumstances of an individual property can be discussed with staff, and a sense of clarity and reassurance will ideally be provided back to the resident. So Access GP, in summary, is a major part of our communication plan, and moving this from a complex discussion into a face-to-face conversation, either through Access GP or by attending some of our engagement sessions. So that's the overall approach. If there are other questions, I'd be happy to take any questions on this.
Thank you for that, Director Cooper. Councillor Blackmore has a follow-up.
Just as a follow-up question, I know that there will be residents and business owners out there who hear this today and want more information, but who have never previously contacted the city. Can you just reiterate the access points and how to reach out to those?
Yes, through the chair. There's two pieces here. There's general information, which is typically targeted to residents specifically. And then as we move through this 3-week period, there could well be stakeholders that have curiosities and interests, and there will be mechanisms made available to address them specifically. So if you have a general concern, you would reach out to Access GP, which is on the city website and can be contacted directly. If you are a stakeholder in the community, then we would encourage you to reach out to individuals such as Chief Glavin and make sure those processes are followed there.
And that website address and that phone number is?
That website and phone number is cityofgrandprairie.com, or specifically info@cityofgp.com. That's the email address for Access GP.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Cooper. Councillor Blackmore, did you have another follow-up? Or
311 is the phone number, correct?
There we go. Thank you for that supplemental, Councillor Blackmore. I did see Councillor Berg's hand shoot up. Do you still have a question, or did Councillor Blackmore ask your question?
Councillor Blackmore knocked them down just like bowling pins. So I had a number of questions around communications and how important it is, and Chief Cooper answered them quite well. So I appreciate the assurances that our public will be informed. It has been a complex issue that we've been dealing with, and we over time have come to understand it, and should we pass it, it's because we feel it's in the best interest of our citizens, and but at the same time we want them to understand to the level that we do too. And so the best way to do that is through communication. So thank you, Chief Cooper.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Berg. If Councillor Blackmore's bowling game is as strong as her council game, then watch out. I'm sure she's thrown multiple strikes. Anyways, I'll look to other questions. Councillor O'Connor?
Thank you. I had some reservations. However, it was pointed out to me, oh, by the way, your communication report and how you're going forward is very well laid out and comprehensive, and I appreciate that, and the public will appreciate that. I'm just wondering if there isn't one piece missing, is that my concern was around the tiered layer levels and what the pricing was, but apparently it was pointed out to me that that may be offset by a tax reduction. And I'm just wondering, is that going to be part of the communication to make sure people are paying the right amount and they're going to be net to the good? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So as far as that communication strategy, I guess it was directed to Director Cooper. Essentially, when we go out to the public, are we going to show them the reduction to their taxes in comparison to the cost of the utility model? I think everyone's looking. Chief Glavin's going to take a stab at it. I think part of the challenge is, Councillor O'Connor, and you might hear this from our chiefs, is that every property is individually different and distinct to itself. So we can't necessarily show. We could show an average value, and then like this is what your tax bill would be if you have on an average priced home. And this is what the reduction versus the impact of the utility model is. But I'll turn it over to Chief Glavin or Chief Whiteway, whoever wants to take this on.
Certainly. So we have put together some key messages as well as some Q&As. So perhaps maybe I'll just read one of those. I think it'll answer a little bit of your question and what we're going to communicate out on this topic. So introducing the storm utility water charge is designed to be revenue neutral for the city. So it's not on a per property basis, and have a low net impact on most residential customers. Offsetting stormwater expenses with corresponding tax reductions ensures that the overall tax levy remains balanced. The strategic approach prevents significant tax increases, keeping the 2024 tax to 3.28% instead of a potentially higher rate that would have been seen without the implementation of a stormwater utility charge. Hope that helps.
Yeah, and I really appreciate, I think it's important that our residents understand that, and it's not there is an impression that this is a money grab, and it isn't. So I want to make sure that's communicated when we go out, and we'll see as it comes forward what the feedback from the community is, and there's an opportunity for good discussion, and if there needs to be changes, I assume that we'll be making and adjusting as we go forward. So I want to thank you. And the other supplemental? Yep. Just want to make sure that we talk about our institution and our churches and where they fit in and how they can communicate if they're going to be adversely affected. And I want to make sure that that is taken care of.
Okay, thanks for those comments and for the request for reassurances. I have Mayor Clayton and then Councillor Blessy in the queue.
Thanks, Chair Thiessen. Just a question for administration that possibly could help those who are looking to learn more. Can you maybe explain how industrial institutional lands were assessed, and so that people understand the technical side of actually how these assessments were done individually. Maybe just a little expansion on that would be appreciated.
Yeah, Ms. Donnelly.
Through the chair, the city staff utilized an aerial photo that we have that gives us a clear image of properties, and we were able to determine impervious area from that. And so each property was looked at individually to determine the impervious area, and then that was utilized to determine where the charge was for those tiered parcels. And that's the data that we're looking to have available on the website, and I would encourage owners to go and take a look at that. And through that process, we'd also give an opportunity for, if there's identify something that needs to be reviewed further.
Does that answer your question, Mayor Clayton?
You bet. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Bessie, I'm going to defer to Councillor Blackmore, and then we'll jump right to you there. Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. Unfortunately, while we strive to build a model that is as revenue neutral as possible, there will be particularly businesses or commercial, industrial businesses in the community who will be paying more, either because they hadn't previously paid taxes at the same level or because it's a new introduction, such as provincial buildings. Where will those people be able to access information pertinent to their particular situation and to better understand why this has been implemented? They're not going to see it as tax neutral, unfortunately. I don't know who wants to answer that, but
I see Chief Glavin making an attempt here.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. Yeah, certainly it's on a property by property basis, it's certainly not neutral. Overall, that was the goal, and we've generally achieved the goal of neutrality overall. General rule is that the higher density and higher assessment the property is, generally the better they would fare under a stormwater utility model. And those with lower assessment and high, very extensive land uses. So, if you have a large yard space, there's not a lot of assessment generated off that, but there's a lot of stormwater generated from that. So those types of properties would generally not fare as well. So there are a couple things that we're looking at right now. One is ultimately the assessment of the property individually that would show how much that would go out to the residents. And two, we're also looking at a potential map that could be released for people to look up their properties.
And just a follow-up question, I know when you talk about large yards, for example, a lay-down yard, if it's, a foot or however many inches of gravel, they typically gravel their yards with. Can you mention or explain to us why a gravel or hard-packed roadway is not pervious?
Chief Clevin.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. I'll give you a very high-level answer, and then if we need to get into more technical, I'll defer over to our engineering services director. But essentially, when you start looking at runoff coefficients of different types of services, concrete, pavement, packed gravel, packed materials typically perform very similarly, and that's why a graveled yard that's packed, and generally speaking, most yards that are used are there because traffic on them, and they get packed down, and they perform similarly to pavement.
And you're measuring that. My understanding is you're measuring that on significant storm events, not the casual rains that we get throughout the year.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. Yes, ultimately with the storm system, it's designed for events that are beyond what the soils would be able to absorb when they become saturated, then run off into our storm system components.
Okay, thank you very much for all those questions and answers, Councillor Blackmore and Chief Glavin. I'll turn it over to Councillor Bessie.
Great, thank you. Just a slightly technical question that I'm trying to wrap my brain around is I'm looking at the table with the four, I can't see it if I show up, but at the table attachment 3 that's got the 4 different tier systems council could adopt. I'm not quite understanding why. I'm not understanding how the tiers are connected to the title. So the recommended thing is monthly charge with 100 billing unit cap, but then tier 6 is 86 or greater. So I'm not understanding why this is 100 billing cap instead of an 86 billing cap.
Chief Clavin.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. So with at the top of each table, it shows what the cap is. So essentially, it's 86 and beyond, but it's capped out at 100. So everybody at 86 and above is included in there. But let's say you had 105 billing units, you're only billed at 100. So all of those properties, so yeah, get lumped together, and we take the average of it. The average is very much on the high end of that range of 86 to 100. I think it's closer to 98 in that one, but that's where the cap is implemented. So there is the maximum of 100 on there, just like in the other ones, like in table 1, I think is the 50, and then we have the 200 and 300. They are capped out there in the calculations at that top end. So anybody above 100 stops at 100.
Sorry, I'm a little bit confused by that. But somebody with 99 units is paying the same amount as somebody with 86 units.
Chief Clavin?
Within the range, yes.
Sorry, I'm just really having troubles wrapping my brain around this. So yeah, I guess I don't really understand what's happening with that. When you hit that 100, I don't understand what actually changes for you versus if you're 101 units or 99 units. I guess I don't understand what's different.
Chief Clavin?
And I may ask our director to supplement, but essentially it's the average of that entire tier. So every property that has a billing unit within that tier, so 86, 87, to whatever it may be, all those costs are multiplied together, added up, and there's an average, and then everybody within that tier pays the average.
Okay.
I'll look for Director Donnelly for supplement.
Through the chair, yeah, thanks. So what we did is we used the impervious areas to figure out the number of billing units associated to each property, and that was a good starting point. However, there are properties that have substantial billing units, and one of the things is that to place the burden of the entire system potentially on that one property does not fairly and equitably distribute the costs, because the system is shared as it goes downstream. So what we've done is we've tried to find a methodology of distributing costs that recognizes that shared portion and doesn't put an undue burden on any single property. And so that is in the report. There was a look at what is the cap for the highest burden we'd place on any single property, and then based on that, then it does redistribute the cost. That's why you see the table in the report as you see it. And then we took a really close look at that and tried to find a balance within those tiers and a way to try and distribute the costs in a way that would be fair and equitable without placing any overburden on a single property.
Gotcha. So if I'm understanding what you're saying then is the 100 billion unit cap is in your back-end calculations, you're pretending no properties above 100 billion units in your back-end calculations. But on the front end, as somebody who owns property, really I'm seeing that 86 cap in some ways, because I'm never going to pay more. A property that's 110 will pay the same as 86 as a property that's 86. Am I understanding that right? So if I've got this $916, if I've got 86 or more billing units, I'm always paying that $916, correct?
Dr. Donnelly.
So once the cap was placed on, then we knew the number of billing units in total we could recover from, and then we distributed it once again into the tiers. So they are two different things that are occurring. Okay. One is a decision on, or I guess the recommendation that we've put forward as to the maximum burden on any single property that results, and then the distribution within the tiers again. So the tiers, once you know that you're assigned to a tier, you pay the amount for that tier. So again, it is a sharing that's occurring through the of the burden basically across the system.
Great. It's definitely technical stuff, so thank you for your patience walking me through that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your series of questions, Councillor Bessie. I'm not going to pull my own number, but I'm going to put myself in the queue. I got Councillor Bosch and then Chair Thiessen.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. My question is, we understand that this is due to potential increase in extreme weather events that have been happening all over the world, and that our stormwater system can adequately assist us in this water damage potential. The stormwater improvements in the future and things like costs for new development or developers building large properties, will we have information out publicly on all of these aspects? Like what are we doing for stormwater now? Because I think it's a subject that we don't necessarily talk about it at the dinner table, right? And so that what this money covers in their stormwater system now, and what this will look like in the future, like versus maintenance or new capital projects and such. Will we have information on that to the public?
Director Donnelly. Wait, no, I see Chief Glavin. He can answer what he says.
Sure, thank you, Chair Thiessen. So there's not an immediate change in service level, but to your point, we do have a stormwater master plan that goes back to 2018 that we utilize as part of our capital budgeting process. So often our stormwater infrastructure is done concurrently when we do roads, although it's not always true. There's elements of the stormwater system that aren't either adjacent or within the roadways. But that's the main way that we do that. And then we do that through the standards that we force developers to design their new subdivisions to when they bring them online. When we go through an older area that may have a standard that was lower, just because at the time perhaps we weren't seeing the same types of weather events, or assumptions have changed over what the size of the utilities should be, we would address that at the time that we go back into them for a capital program to rehabilitate an area. But immediately you won't see a dramatic change of how we administer the storm system. However, over time we'll have a more critical view on this now, as we'll be budgeting for it slightly more independently than we have been in the past, and will give us more opportunity to keep the focus on this critical piece of infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I call in my own number here, Chief Glavin. I've always, I think, maybe pushed a little bit on the credit system that we're trying to establish. I think I got my answers during budget, what kind of investments would be there. I try to translate it to what the regular homeowner is. And so I guess my question for you is, it's pretty scientific that a large deciduous tree can hold up to 4,000 gallons of water per year. That's in the stem, the leaf, the branches, the bark, and the root system. And up to 200 meters cubed during a large rainfall event from everything hitting, and to mitigate water getting into the stormwater system and overwhelming it. Currently, right now, I'm looking down at my phone, the United States Environmental Protection Agency. They have a report. It's fairly detailed and lengthy. Stormwater to street trees, and how we can extend the life of our stormwater system by planting trees there. The term is actually called bioretainment, and the first time that I heard that term was when I went to FCM in Halifax, and that was part of their stormwater mitigation strategy, was to plant trees near the bollards and encourage residents to plant large deciduous trees that could mature and soak up all the stormwater and prevent it from actually getting into the system. So my question is actually kind of a two-tier question. Question number one is, have we researched the impact of trees? Since we do have an urban forest strategy, this is actually, the subtitle to this EPA is Engineering Urban Forests for Stormwater Management, which seems to be in line with another direction that City Council is going in. But have we researched the impact of trees mitigating the number of storm water getting into the system and how it can preserve our stormwater system? And would we consider in the future, if we pass this on February 12th, to create a credit-based system for individual resident homeowners or churches or anybody impacted by this to encourage them to be responsible in their plantings and development of their own property to help with the stormwater system. So second question is, are we making considerations? Will we make considerations in the future? And how much research have we done into this?
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. So I'll take an initial crack at it, and if I need to, I'll defer it to Director Donnelly. I know that there was some consideration. However, in the current bylaw, I believe you have to make more than a 15% improvement in stormwater flows to be considered for a credit. To do that, generally speaking, you're going to need to make a pretty substantial investment in order to detain those waters on site, as opposed to them running off into the stormwater system. Although trees are useful, and I don't think we've done enough research to be able to say the exact calculation on a typical residential lot and what you would need to do in order to hit that 15% that we've currently proposed in the bylaw. I think that's certainly something that could be taken away and taken a look at for potential future credits. But as you pointed out, it's not contemplated in the current bylaw. The main thing that the stormwater system tries to mitigate is in those storm events when you hit saturation in any of the soils or anything else that could absorb water, and it starts moving into the storm system, which I'm not a botanist or anybody on that end of it, so I don't know the exact absorption rate of tree roots in the event of a storm system, but I don't believe that they would be in a significant event be able to absorb it fast enough to mitigate it into the storm system. But that's a bit of conjecture at this point. I think that's something that would be a takeaway for us to take a look at.
Okay, no, thank you very much for that answer, and for the hopeful future, we're potentially looking into bioretainment strategies, especially as we move towards our urban forestry strategy. I think these two can play hand in hand and keep the life of our stormwater system going longer without having the users have to pay over the long term. But that's just one consideration, and this is going not just to February 12th, but years in the future. But I will send you the link to the EPA Urban Forest Strategy on trees to storm. I had Councillor Blackmore in the queue.
Just a comment and then a question. A comment to Councillor Thiessen's, like, no one supports planting of trees more than me, I think. But the trees that we grow here are not comparable to the trees that they grow in the U.S. as far as water retention. The trees they grow in the U.S. are hardwood trees with very large canopies and very large root systems, and they retain and hold a lot more water than a 3-inch poplar tree in Grande Prairie. So that is something that if we are looking eventually at a credit system, that would take it would be challenging to determine the effectiveness of the trees that we are able to grow here in any kind of significant way. That was just a comment to that. My question that I have as we move forward is, I had mentioned we've spent close to 3 years having this conversation. We've looked at a lot of different models, and I'm wondering if perhaps Chief Glavin could remind us of how many communities are using a very similar model, or if we invented this ourselves.
Chief Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. I'm sure someone on the team can pull the exact amount, but there's, I think, well over 20 in Canada and dramatically more in the United States that utilize a storm utility model. There's also numerous other cities in Canada that are currently in the same process that we are looking at implementation of a stormwater utility. As far as what types of systems, there's a range. Tiered is the dominant system. There's some that use an impervious model, which is what ours is based on, but they use it essentially that it's very precise. So, trying to be exacting in how many square meters of impervious area you have on your property and trying to bill you exactly what that is. Ours is based on that, but on a tiered system. And then there's also some municipalities use purely flat rate charges. The one you'd be most familiar with would be Calgary.
And just a follow-up question, the impervious method sounds more accurate, and so and this council did discuss that for several months in great detail and decided to move to a tiered system. what is more beneficial about a tiered system above the more precise impervious model?
I'll turn that over to Director Donnelly.
Through the chair, thank you for that question. So I think that it's recognizing that the system, the distance from the properties potentially to the creek, and the age of the system, and the number of properties utilizing the same components, whether it's a pond or an outfall, and just, you know, it does at some point, it is shared, and so therefore not placing the entire burden of that system on one better reflects the fact that there is the shared component. And so that's where we ended up more with the tier than trying to be very, very specific.
So this is more equitable because the utility itself is shared, so the cost should be shared.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question and answer. I have Mayor Clayton in the queue.
Thanks, Chair Thiessen. Just on that same vein, Ms. Donnelly, would it be fair to say that the tiered system, as we're currently at a stage of implementation, there are models that would have seen significantly larger increases to sectors of taxpayers, and this model, as laid out, potentially has the least amount of financial impact at implementation, in the sense that other models may have seen people receiving stormwater utility bills of much greater dollars, and this model sort of mitigates some of that. I think that Council would all agree that having as least amount of impact to homeowners as well as business people would be a goal out of this. We all agree that this is a user pay model. However, the model in front of us, in my opinion, and maybe Ms. Donnelly can confirm, at the high ends and the low ends will have the least amount of impact. Would that be fair?
Ms. Donnelly?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you for that question, Mayor Clayton, and for this response. Looking around, I'm not seeing a lot of hands shooting up. I know that I had my big question asked with a lot of preamble. So I guess what we're looking for today is just a motion to send this to Council, and then we can discuss this. Councillor Blackmore.
I would move that committee recommend Council give 3 readings to Bylaw C1443, being the Stormwater Drainage Bylaw, implementing a stormwater utility charge. And in speaking to this, change is always a struggle for all of us, and we don't like to see change, but sometimes there's better ways of dealing with an issue than what we've done traditionally. And after a long period of time of discussions, it seems that a stormwater utility charge is in fact a more equitable and fair way of collecting the fees to cover the cost of a utility that we know we need and that we've been paying for through taxes. So I would ask Council and I would ask Committee to support sending this to Council. I just have one quick question to Administration. This is going to Council on February 12th. Does that need to be included in this motion? Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I've just, so for the viewing public, the question was directed to our city manager, and the head shake, you don't capture that on camera, so.
And I ask that because typically standing committee business goes to the next council meeting, which would be January 29th. So yes, this will come to Council February 12th.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Blackmore. I'll look for a discussion. I have Councillor Bessy in the queue.
Great. Thank you, Chair Thiessen. Just a question for administration in terms of process. Personally, I'm not looking for a big change, but I'm looking for us to change the tiers based on another table that was presented in this report. I'm assuming that as long as I made a motion, if I persuaded my colleagues to switch to a tier that was presented here but isn't the one being recommended, that would be doable on February 12th, that it's okay to postpone that conversation to then, or am I wrong about that?
Look to our city manager, Mr. Burke.
Yes, as long as it was in line with the models that we proposed, that change could be accommodated.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then I'll hold all my thoughts till that council meeting.
Uh-oh. He's going to explode. Anyways, all jokes aside, we do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. And that motion passes. We'll talk stormwater on February 12th around this table, and to any members of the public who are watching at home, it'd be great to get educated and informed. Call your council, call them in, and check out Access GP for all the good information. Hopefully that'll be able to answer all your questions, because this isn't just a small change. It's a fairly significant change, both for how we operate as a city and for what you're used to as residents. So we want to make sure that understanding is clear and transparent. Thank you very much for the report, Mr. Cooper, Ms. Donnelly. And we'll move right along to our next item agenda, which is our outstanding items list, and I'll turn that back to Chief Glavin. But first, I have Councillor Palat with the hand up.
Thanks, Chair Thiessen. I just potentially under other business, although I'm not a voting member on this committee, I think it lands in this one. So I was hoping to make a comment, and if somebody on this committee was interested in making a motion. Last year we had a report brought to us about the use of the Bose Centre side, and so I'm hoping that somebody could make a motion to have that come back forward with two specific changes in that, because administration's done a fair amount of work identifying how many of those events included 250 or more people and how many of them were multi-day events. I think this is the right committee for that one, but if I'm wrong, pardon me. Oh, sorry, I'll save it for InvestGP, which I can make a motion on. Thanks.
Oh, well, there you go. I was going to say, well, maybe InvestGP or Public and Protective Services, probably InvestGP, because that other one has the wrong outstanding items list. But thank you for that. I look forward to that coming up. And I'll turn it back to Chief Glavin for our outstanding items list.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. No amendments are necessary.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the outstanding items list as presented.
I would make that motion.
Councillor Blackmore, call the question. All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you, everyone. This was a long meeting, so I'm going to give us about 5 minutes to do all the necessary stuff that we need to do to be ready for the next meeting. Thank you very much for all the great questions and great answers. And this meeting is adjourned.